After my death, my husband used my corpse to threaten our 2 children, just to bring his so-called white moonlight back as his official wife. Only then did I learn, before marrying me, he had long been wed to another woman and even had children. He used my dowry to support the one he truly loved. Her daughter stole the engagement meant for my own daughter. Her son used my father's influence to secure a prosperous path. And what of my children? They were forced by the very man they respected most to give up their status as legitimate heirs. My daughter was married off as a concubine to a merchant and died during childbirth. My son had his future severed, imprisoned in a remote estate, and lived the rest of his life in solitude. But when I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day he came to my family to propose marriage. This lifetime, I shall personally sever his path to glory, and plunge him into eternal ruin and disgrace. Let's see if he and his white moonlight can still bask in love like before. I smiled and closed my eyes one final time. Looking up at my husband, Xiaming, who was weeping by my bedside, I reached out, wanting to wipe away his tears. But my hand passed straight through him. Only then did I remember. I was already dead. I shook my head and let out a soft, helpless laugh. Silly man, why cry now? At your age, won't others laugh at such sentiment? A sourness rose in my chest, and before it could fade, Xiaming suddenly tilted his head back and burst into loud laughter. His expression twisted into a terrifying madness. That bitch is finally dead. I've waited so long for the day she stopped breathing. My Warner can now become the proper wife. Not a shred of sorrow on his face. Only wild, maniacal joy. I stood frozen in place. What did he mean by finally dead? What did he mean by I endured until you were buried? And Warner, who was she? It didn't take long to find the answer. Before our children returned, Xiaming had hidden my corpse. Then, he galloped straight to the outskirts of Jingzhou. Spring winds gently blew. A sea of peach blossoms danced, as if heaven itself had descended to earth. There, a dainty woman stood with a few handmaidens, picking peach blossoms. When she saw Xiaming, her eyes lit up. Without a word, the two ran toward each other and embraced under the peach trees, oblivious to any onlookers. With a gentle voice, he said, "Warner, you've suffered. That vile woman is finally dead." Hearing those words, the woman burst into tears of joy. Only I stood amid that radiant garden, heart cut open by 1,000 blades. Because this place. This was the very dowry estate Xiaming took from me right after our marriage. He told me it would be a good place to entertain colleagues. Out of love and devotion, I handed over the deed without question. Little did I know, this was where he had hidden his beloved all along. Without delay, Xiaming brought her back to the manor. My 2 children, upon hearing of my death, rushed home. Their eyes red with tears as they searched the estate, crying, "Where is mother? Where is she?" At last, they found him. Xiaming stood holding Warner's hand, coldly looking at my children. "Your mother is gone. If you want to find her, there is one condition." Xian was stunned. A condition. We want to see our mother, and we must meet a condition. Xianing was sharper. She stared at the unfamiliar woman and asked, "Who is she?" Xiaming cleared his throat and looked affectionately at the woman beside him. "Her name is Lin Wan, my original wife. Years ago, when I traveled to the capital for the imperial exam, I believed she died during wartime chaos. That was the only reason I married your mother. Now I've found her, and also your elder siblings. From now on, you should call her mother." He covered the vile truth with flowery lies, turning despicable betrayal into a touching love story worthy of the heavens. Xianing sneered coldly. "Mother. I have no such mother. I don't know whether it's heaven playing tricks, or father being incompetent. You searched for decades and found nothing, yet the day our mother died, you miraculously found her. Did our mother's spirit guide you to your long-lost lover? Besides, does she look like someone who has suffered for decades trying to find her husband? Lin Ruan, under Xie Ming's protection, never worked, never managed a household. Though she had birthed 2 children, she still looked like a young maiden. While I, despite taking care of myself, had aged from years of quiet suffering behind closed doors. Yet she looked younger than me, by far. A flicker of guilt flashed in Xie Ming's eyes. Then, smack. He slapped Xie Ming across the face. Insolent. How dare you speak that way to your father? It's your mother's poor teachings that made you both so unruly. Listen well. If you refuse to give up your status as legitimate heirs, you'll never see your mother again. Guards. Lock these unfilial brats away. Do not release them without my command. I stood there, watching my own flesh and blood dragged away. Hatred boiled in my chest, hot enough to scorch bone. But I was already dead. Even the right to hate had been stripped away. In the end, it was my daughter Xianning who wept and gave in. Xian resisted fiercely, teeth clenched, refusing to bow. Xie Ming sneered and said, "With this weather, your mother's body is probably rotting already." No. Ninger, don't agree. Mother begs you. I tried to stop them. Tried to tell them not to surrender. But the barrier between life and death was absolute. My children, hearing such cruelty, hugged each other tightly and cried. And in the end, even Xian had no choice but to yield. 3 months after my death, Xie Ming welcomed Lin Ruan into the Xie residence with 10 miles of red bridal silk, marrying her in a grand ceremony and officially bestowing upon her the title of matriarch of the Xie clan. Her children. They were immediately recognized as legitimate heirs of the Xie family. Even the marriage alliance I had once painstakingly arranged for my daughter was snatched away by that woman without a trace of shame. Xie Ming was utterly shameless. He poured all the influence and social connections left behind by my father into the hands of Lin Ruan's son. He and his mistress had long endured quietly, sucking every last bit of value from me, not only while I lived, but even after I died. Her daughter became an imperial consort, wielding power in the palace. Her son became the youngest Grand Minister in court history. Their entire family ascended in glory, basking in wealth and honor, unrivaled under heaven. And my poor children. They became nothing more than the stepping stones beneath their feet. My daughter was sold off as a concubine to a wealthy merchant. All her husband's wealth flowed endlessly into the Xie coffers, bringing fortune and prosperity to the ones who betrayed me. On her deathbed, writhing in pain from a difficult birth, my daughter sobbed. "Mother, it hurts. Mother. I miss you so much." Fearing my son's revenge, Xie Ming locked him in a secluded manor for life. Grief consumed him. He turned to wine and painting to dull the pain. But when he learned of his sister's death, his mind shattered. He went mad. In a world ablaze with lantern light and celebration, there was not a single lamp left to warm my children's hearts. Even a wild beast will not devour its own young. And yet Xie Ming was less than a beast. If there were a chance to live again, I swore I would make him suffer a fate worse than death. And heaven heard me. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day Xie Ming came to my family's gate, begging an audience with my father. At this time, I was the cherished daughter of the Prime Minister's household, a pearl held in the palm of my father's hand, beloved and pampered by all. And he was nothing more than a poor, nameless scholar from the countryside, no title, no backing, no future. I stood atop the grand stone steps of the Lam Manor, looking down from above. There, kneeling at the base, was the pitiful figure of young Xie Ming, dressed in plain robes. This life. How should I ruin you to my heart's content, my beloved husband? 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. I slowly lowered my gaze to him, expression unreadable. In his youth, Xie Ming indeed had a certain allure. tall and slender like a bamboo stalk, even kneeling in the wind. May I trouble you to pass on a message so I might be granted a meeting? His eyes sparkled. Ambition burned plainly in their depths. In my previous life, he had also approached me like this. I had been foolish then, so smitten that I begged my father to meet him. My father, unable to resist my pleading, finally agreed. He even took Xiaming in as a protégé, invited renowned scholars to tutor him, and did all he could to lift him up. Eventually, he married me. And my father continued to clear the way for him in court. In the end, Xiaming replaced my father, becoming the youngest prime minister in the dynasty. The Lam family gave him everything, our resources, our reputation, our hearts. And I gave him my dowry. The result. We had only raised a white-eyed wolf who bit the hand that fed him. I looked at him, half smiling. Does the young master have an invitation? Has anyone recommended you? Or, do you possess any remarkable talents worth our time? Xiaming, who still held on to some pride, visibly paled with every word. Because right now, he had nothing. And with nothing, he had no place here. Then I must ask the young master to leave. I retracted my smile and coldly ordered the steward to expel him. Xiaming stood abruptly, unwilling to accept defeat. He stepped forward, but the steward held out an arm to block him. His gaze flickered toward me, complicated, hesitant. He opened his mouth a few times as if to speak, but couldn't bring himself to say anything. The steward, growing impatient, stepped up to drive him away. Xiaming clenched his jaw and raised his voice. Miss Lam, I believe I will rise to greatness one day. If you're willing to support me, I swear I'll repay your kindness and fulfill your every desire. I froze for a moment. Inside, I couldn't help but wonder. Was this man brain damaged? He had yet to achieve even the tiniest scrap of power. And yet he dared speak to me with the tone of a benefactor. I looked at him as if I were staring at a fool. A flash of anger passed through his eyes, but he quickly composed himself. Then he added through gritted teeth. If Miss Lam is willing, I would like to propose marriage. One day, I vow to grant you the title of first-ranked imperial consort. Standing tall, Xiaming wore an expression of reluctant benevolence, as if offering me the position of his wife was some grand favor he bestowed. He said he would make me a first-rank noble consort. In my previous life, he indeed fulfilled that promise. But such a so-called favor, to me, it was nothing more than a joke. If I had truly desired a noble title, in either this life or the last, all I needed was not to be foolish. There was no need to suffer for decades just to be granted such a rank. Seeing me pause in silence, Xiaming assumed I was moved. A smug light filled his eyes, certain that victory was within his grasp. I sneered inwardly. Did he still believe I was the infatuated fool from the past? But this only confirmed something for me. Not only had I been reborn, so had he. How very interesting. So he wanted to walk the same path to power as before. Not a chance. This time, I would make him watch. As everything he once possessed slipped through his fingers, piece by piece. I would let him taste the helplessness my daughter once felt. Let him suffer the misery my son once endured. Before I could even mock his delusional ambition, the steward beside me stepped forward with fury in his eyes. He snatched a wooden rod from a nearby guard and, without hesitation, brought it down hard on Xiaming. What gutter creature dares defile my young lady's name? What are you, to speak such filth before the gates of the Prime Minister's manor? Her future husband will be a man of unparalleled status. You're nothing but a toad dreaming of the moon. The steward's strikes came fast and fierce. Xiaming had no chance to dodge, let alone fight back. He nearly blurted out. Our lady is worthy of being a princess consort, a crown princess, even an empress. But he bit his tongue, and in his rage, could only roar. You miserable wretch, how dare you bark at our gates? Clutching his head, staggering, Xiaming finally began to understand. In the eyes of the world, the distance between him and Lam Shu was that of heaven and earth. She would never lower herself to meet him. And he didn't even have the right to climb up. But when he remembered the glory of his past life, the pride long buried in his cowardly heart reignited. Groveling on the ground, he raised his head stubbornly and glared at me. "Miss Lam, your servants treat me like this only because you have a powerful father, isn't that right? Have you ever heard the saying, 'Do not look down on a poor youth'?" I couldn't help it, I laughed out. How truly naive. How laughable, this frog at the bottom of a well. The Lam family had stood tall for a century before producing a prime minister like my father. And you. A penniless, nameless scholar, not even from a respectable lineage. How dare you speak such madness? I slowly descended the marble steps, raising my foot and pressing it firmly on the back of his hand. As Xiaming winced, holding back a grunt of pain, I spoke leisurely. "So we shouldn't look down on poor youths, nor poor men in their middle age, nor even poor old men. Should we worship poverty then?" His face turned pale. I continued, voice light but icy. "Yes, I'm bullying you, because I have a powerful father. Even if Xiaming became the top scholar in the land, if he tried to cling to the prime minister's household, he would eventually be cast aside and destroyed." Xiaming looked up at me, eyes full of disbelief. You're not supposed to be like this." He couldn't understand. Why had the gentle, reserved Lam Shu from his past life changed? In the previous life, I had treated him with tenderness and caution, never hesitating to give him everything. Under my father's arrangements, he became my husband. We lived a marriage of superficial harmony, polite and distant. For decades, I never once raised my voice. Never once scolded him. Could it be? Lam Shu had also been reborn. Could it be, she knew everything he had done? A bold, terrifying thought crept into Xiaming's mind. His expression changed repeatedly. His once gentle eyes gradually turned cold and calculating. And I understood immediately. He had guessed the truth. So what? Why should I be afraid? "Lam Shu, you'll regret this," Xiaming growled, forcing himself to stand. I had to restrain the urge to tell the steward to beat him again. Instead, I said one word, cold, clear. "Leave." Xiaming stared at me for a long moment, eyes dark. Then he turned away, pride forcing him to walk upright as he left. I tilted my head slightly and said to my maid, "Feline, have someone follow him. Every step, every word, every detail, report everything to me." Feline bowed and withdrew. I turned back, watching Xiaming's figure shrink into the distance. Bathed in the golden glow of the setting sun, his thin frame stretched long upon the ground. For some reason, I laughed. Perhaps I laughed at his boundless greed, his laughable arrogance. Or perhaps I laughed at myself. For once being so blind as to be deceived by such a man. Xiaming had nothing but his stubborn pride. Even the bundle on his back was thinner than his frame. He couldn't even afford to stay in the cheapest inn. Before the Prime Minister's family extended help, he had been living in a ruined temple outside the city with beggars. Back in my courtyard, I sat calmly on the swing. Eyes closed, savoring the gentle early autumn breeze. In my mind, two small figures appeared. My daughter and my son. Whether in the past life or this one, they were the ones I failed most. In the past, I placed all my hopes on them, wishing only that they'd become Daeons and phoenixes among men. And in doing so, I forgot that children, too, need warmth to stand tall. Yet even so, they never once blamed me. Just so I could rest in peace. My children were willing to give up everything they had. If they had even a fraction of Xiaming's ruthlessness back then, would he have risen so smoothly? Would that vile family have drained them of every drop of blood and flesh? But no matter how many times I apologize. In this life, I will never see them again. Send someone to Tanzhou, Xiaming's hometown. Look for a woman named Lin Ruan. Fulin asked no questions, she simply bowed and left to carry out my order. The next day, I met the young lady of the Yuan family at a tea house. As expected, Yuan Shizi followed Aang. His sister gave him a side eye and grumbled. Why is it that every time Sister Lam invites me, you insist on tagging along? No one else gets this treatment. Yuan Shizi's face flushed red. He quickly grabbed his tea, downed it in one go, and burst into a coughing fit. His sister sighed, exasperated. I paused for a moment, something vague stirring in my mind. But before the thought could fully form, a familiar voice called out from outside. This humble one is Xiaming, a scholar from Tanzhou. I beseech Yuan Shizi for an audience. Yuan Shizi glanced at me, then coldly spat out one word. Scram. With that command, his guards instantly moved to drive the man away. But Xiaming, unwilling to miss his chance to worm into high society, raised his voice. Yuan Shizi. I have a plan that can help you with your current predicament. Yuan Lang frowned, clearly losing patience. He stood, opened the door, and shot Xiaming a look of scorn. A mocking smile tugged at his lips. My situation has already been handled. Meeting with you now would only confirm that the men who roughed you up last night were mine. Remember this. Stay far, far away from me. Or don't blame me for being discourteous. Xiaming had spent all his effort just to get near Yuan Lang, thinking he could rise to power without the Prime Minister's help. Instead, he was slapped in the face with public humiliation. Just as he clenched his fists in shame and fury, a clear voice rang out from inside the room. Sister Lam, this pastry is delicious. Try it. Since his rebirth, Xiaming had stumbled again and again. At that moment, his last shred of pride snapped. Lam Shu. Lady Lam. He cried. I don't know what I've done to offend you. Why do you scheme against me over and over again? Why can't you just leave me be? His voice trembled with grievance, like he was the victim. I calmly took a sip of tea, unbothered. Fulin, seeing that I had no intention of responding, stepped outside. Young master, she sneered. If Our Lady really wanted to ruin you, you wouldn't even have made it to this tea house. You'd be barking from the streets. Her words slapped him straight in the face. A brutal reminder of his powerlessness. Yuan Lang followed up, voice cool. If you truly had talent, you'd go to my household, take the official test, and earn your place. Not stand out here spewing nonsense and slandering nobles. Miss Lam is the woman I admire. You dared disrespect her yesterday. Having my men teach you a lesson was the least I could do. Yuan Lang nearly pointed straight at his face and called him trash. Failing even the first step, yet already playing at politics. Xiaming understood the veiled words. His face turned ashen, his knees nearly buckling. No, it's not like that, it's not what you think. But before he could finish, the tea house owner stormed over with his staff and threw Xiaming out onto the street. He landed hard in the dust. Crowds gathered, whispering and laughing. Where'd this beggar crawl from? Accusing nobles in broad daylight. If you're tired of living, go hang yourself somewhere else. Don't mess up my business. From now on, don't let him near this place again. From the window seat upstairs, I leaned slightly, looking down. Our eyes met. His face went pale. I curved my lips into a smile. Then mouthed a single, silent word. Trash. When Xiaming saw the shape of my lips, his breath caught in his chest. A mouthful of blood spurted out. The noble circle in the capital was a sealed circle of power. They might tear each other apart over benefits, status, and scraps of glory. But when an outsider tried to intrude, All grudges would be set aside, and they'd unite to strike down the threat. Let alone a nobody like Xiaming. Even if he were from some renowned noble house of another province, he would still be skinned alive without mercy. But Xiaming remained blissfully unaware, still believing that all he achieved came from his own merit. After being thrown out of the tea house, he knocked on the doors of numerous prestigious estates. As expected, all rejected him without hesitation. After several humiliating rejections, Xiaming grew quiet, planning to burn the midnight oil now. Interesting. In his past life, Xiaming never made it into the top rank of scholars. But he did pass as a second-rank Jinsher, which was still an achievement. I wondered, how far would he make it this time? As I pondered, Feline gently tugged my sleeve. Miss, what do you think of Yuan Shitzi? Yuan Lang and I had grown up together, matched in both status and background. If not for Xiaming, I would have married Yuan Lang in the previous life. Even after I wed Xiaming, Yuan Lang continued to assist him quietly behind the scenes. Only after my rebirth did I understand why Yuan Lang never married in his previous life. This time, I would follow my father's arrangement and marry Yuan Lang as his official wife. I picked up the white jade hairpin Yuan Lang had gifted me, a faint smile tugging at my lips. Yuan Shitzi, you're truly kind. This quality of white jade, even the Duke's household might not obtain it. Yet he gave it to me without a second thought. In my previous life, forget precious jade, even a simple silver hairpin, Xiaming had never given me one. He used to say, "My lady, you already have everything. I, your husband, possess nothing. What gift could I possibly give?" Yet after I died, I saw him present countless treasures to Lin Huan with my own eyes. He never loved me, never truly cared for me. But he never refused the good things I gave him. I had asked, "Do you already have a betrothal? Have you ever tied the knot with anyone?" He denied it. Every time. Without blinking. If he had just said, "There is someone in my heart," I would never have married him. Such a disgusting, deceitful man. Truly revolting. Half a month later, my people finally located Lin Huan, living in poverty in distant Tanzhou. Don't alert her. Bring her to the capital, quietly, I told Feline. Feline blinked in confusion. Miss, are you helping that scholar Xia? I reached out and pinched her cheek playfully. You'll understand once she arrives. To others, this might seem like a blessing. But for Xiaming, this would be a calamity from the heavens. Feline didn't understand what I had planned, but still carried out the order swiftly. For the next 2 months, Xiaming disappeared from public view. Perhaps, he had finally accepted the truth, that in this capital city, he was as insignificant as dust. And me. That day, Yuan Lang publicly acknowledged his affection for me. Soon after, the Yuan family formally approached my father. After their meeting, my father turned to ask my opinion. I shyly nodded, my cheeks slightly flushed. Father sighed in relief, a smile blooming across his face. Some time ago, your people kept following that Xia brat. I worried you might have feelings for him. He's clearly a man with ill intent. If you truly liked him, I feared you'd suffer greatly in the future. These were words he had never told me in my previous life. He had known my temperament. Once I made up my mind, I rarely turned back. He must have feared damaging our bond. So instead of interfering, he had chosen silence. He forbade Xiaming from taking concubines, from keeping maidservants. He laid out a path for him to the Prime Minister's seat. Yet the man we sacrificed so much for still believed we owed him. I felt a sting at the corners of my eyes. My voice trembled slightly. It was this daughter's fault, for making father worry. But rest assured, between me and that man, there is no possibility. Father let out a long breath. You are the treasure in my... This time around, Xie Ming started from a much higher point than his past life. He was crowned top scholar, personally announced by the emperor. On the day the final list was posted, the gates were crowded with nobles and officials hoping to find a worthy son-in-law. Many were captivated by Xie Ming's graceful bearing and refined appearance. Even a servant from the Minister of Personnel's estate stepped forward to grab his hand and escort him away. Only after Xie Ming politely declined did they reluctantly let go. That day, the new top scholar paraded through the streets on horseback, basking in endless glory. Unmarried young ladies lined both sides of the road, tossing embroidered handkerchiefs toward him. I sat on the upper floor of a roadside tea house, lips slightly curled, calmly watching the scene unfold. Xie Ming, as if sensing something, looked up and met my gaze. His eyes held an unrestrained pride. I lifted my hand and gave him a few slow, deliberate claps. Enjoy this final moment of splendor while you can. For your descent into hell begins now. As he rode through the capital that day, Xie Ming even composed a poem on the spot, causing many noble ladies to flutter with admiration. Soon after, he set his sights on the daughter of the imperial tutor to the crown prince, Song Mingyan. He intentionally sought out information. And within a few short days, he coincidentally encountered her several times. With practiced charm and carefully calculated words, Xie Ming succeeded in stirring her heart. Not long after, Miss Song herself brought up the Eidoff marriage with her parents. The Song family was satisfied enough. After all, a newly crowned top scholar was no small catch. The imperial tutor personally sought Xie Ming out. And the engagement was swiftly confirmed. When the engagement was officially announced, I too received a formal invitation. I turned to Feline and said, "We've raised Lin Ruan long enough. It's time for her to be useful." That day, the Song residence bustled with joy. The imperial tutor himself stood at the gate with his future son-in-law, personally greeting guests and introducing Xie Ming to fellow officials. I arrived with my attendants, presented my gifts, and chose a seat with a clear view of the front gate. Not long after, a plainly dressed woman appeared at the gate, dragging none other than Lin Ruan behind her. Xie Ming's face instantly drained of color. Lin Ruan's eyes reddened the moment she saw the lively, festive scene. Tears welled at the corners of her eyes, trembling on the verge of falling. Her lips moved silently, unable to speak. She tugged at the woman's sleeve, trying to turn away. But of course, my people wouldn't let her retreat so easily. The woman shrieked, her voice cutting through the crowd. "Why are you hesitating, Sister Lin? You came all the way from Tanzhou to find your husband. Now you've found him, why won't you acknowledge him?" The shout echoed loud and clear. Everyone inside and outside the Song estate heard it. The guests turned their heads. Whispers rippled through the crowd. I sipped my tea and gave Feline a subtle nod of approval. Lin Ruan's face turned deathly pale as she shook her head over and over. "No, this isn't my husband. You're mistaken. Big sister, you've got the wrong person." "Mistaken? Where? Didn't you say your husband's name was Xie Ming? That you lived together in Tanzhou and even had 2 children? You even mentioned the red mole on the back of his neck. Well then, top scholar Xie. Is this your wife or not?" Xie Ming stood frozen, white as a sheet, unable to say a word. Her story, combined with his reaction, sent the crowd into a frenzy. The imperial tutor's face darkened instantly. Clutching his chest, he nearly collapsed. Still, he grit his teeth and barked. "Guards! Check whether there truly is a red mole on the back of Xie Gongzi's neck." The steward immediately had 2 servants hold Xie Ming down and lifted his collar. Moments later, the steward returned, his face black as soot. He leaned in and whispered to the imperial tutor. Even a man as composed as the imperial tutor couldn't contain his fury. He turned and slapped Xie Ming across the face with a resounding crack. You wretched cur! You dare make a fool of me! What do you think you are? Someone drag this bastard out, he is never to set foot in the Song estate again. The old man stumbled backward, nearly collapsing. Song Mingyan, tears streaming, glared at Xie Ming before running to support her father. As for Xie Ming, after being thrown out, he had the gall to return. Father-in-law. Mother-in-law. Please, let me explain. This is all a misunderstanding. Mingyan, tell them to move aside. But the Song family didn't give him a chance. They ordered their guards to beat him. The only instruction. Just don't kill him. The Song household descended into chaos. They sent a formal plea into the palace requesting the imperial physician. From that moment on, the enmity between Xie Ming and the Song family was sealed. There would be no reconciliation. On my way home, our carriage was suddenly blocked by a battered, bloodied figure. It was Xie Ming. Filthy, bruised, panting heavily. Lamb Shu. All of this was your doing, wasn't it? Why won't you leave me alone? He screamed in the middle of the street, hoarse and wild-eyed. I didn't even look at him. With a flick of my hand, I signaled for my men to gag him. Then drag him somewhere quiet. When I stepped into the alley, Xie Ming had already been pinned to the ground. Without hesitation, I lifted my foot and crushed his face beneath my heel. I knew only a disgrace so complete, so humiliating, would push Xie Ming to risk everything for power. And that recklessness would be the blade that finally ended him. I smiled coldly, voice dripping with contempt. Yes. I did all of this. So what? If you were clean, spotless, untouchable, what leverage would I have? I bent down, leaning close to his ear. Each word struck like a dagger. I want to spare you, truly I do. But tell me, did you ever spare Ner and Ninger? You claim to love that whore and her bastard children so dearly. Then let me help reunite your happy little family. In the afterlife. Xie Ming stiffened, then growled through clenched teeth. What do you want from me? What will it take for you to let me go? I stood up slowly, eyes lifting to the cold night sky. When you've tasted every drop of pain my children once endured, then come ask me again. If I'm willing to forgive you. The chaos at the Song estate spread quickly, reaching even the emperor's ears. The prestigious position Xie Ming had been about to receive vanished like smoke. The emperor, though merciful, demoted him to a petty magistrate post in some desolate, far-flung province. Xie Ming was, of course, unwilling to accept this. Returning to the tiny house he shared with Lin Wan. Eyes bloodshot, he shouted. Why did you come to the capital? Why didn't you just die somewhere? Tears streamed down Lin Ruan's cheeks as she choked. You promised you'd come back for me. Why didn't you return? Why did you marry someone else? Their argument ended with a brutal slap across her face. The youthful affection they once shared, reduced to bitter resentment and blame. When I received the news, I merely laughed. Xie Ming's cruelty had finally turned on Lin Ruan. But she was no different from him. They were two of a kind. Neither worthy of pity. Now truly driven to the edge, Xie Ming gambled everything on one last desperate move. He sought out the second prince, hoping to earn a secret military merit and stage a political comeback. But at the time, the second prince was deliberately lying low, feigning foolishness to avoid suspicion from the crown prince. Xie Ming's open attempt to align with him was like waving a torch in the dark, instantly drawing attention. The crown prince's spies began circling. The second prince nearly collapsed from fear. He immediately ordered all contact with Xie Ming cut off. But Xie Ming, like a man possessed, kept showing up, refusing to let go. Finally, unable to keep pretending. The second prince, the day they were escorted from the capital. Their dismal, ragged procession happened to pass right as my phoenix-embroidered bridal palanquin rolled down the street. The wind lifted the silk curtain, revealing the soft curve of my cheek. That moment, Xie Ming snapped. Sure. It was me. I was wrong. Please say something. I beg you, one more chance. I'll make it right. I'll fix everything. One of the guards smacked him across the face. Do you know who that is? That's the Prime Minister's daughter. Now the Crown Prince's princess consort. Who do you think you are? Want to die? Fine. But don't drag us with you. The blow finally brought clarity to Xie Ming's mind. Princess consort. So even without him, I had easily obtained the title he once thought he gifted me. I smiled, eyes half-lidded, and thought to myself. So in the end, it wasn't you who made me who I am. It was me. I made myself. In the bridal chamber, Dayanan Phoenix candles burned bright. Warm light bathed every corner of the room. I gently held the fan in my hand, a flicker of nervousness in my heart. Xie Ming's street-side screaming had surely reached Yuan Lang's ears. Before long, Yuan Lang entered. His breath tinged with wine, his presence warm and steady. He quietly took the fan from my hand, then clasped my fingers in his own. Sure. Don't be tense. From now on, whatever you want to do, just tell me. No need to dirty your hands. His words. Clear and direct. He knew everything. Every move I made, every trap I set to drag Xie Ming into the abyss. He didn't mind. He was willing to shield me. To do what I could not. And hearing that, I finally exhaled. For the first time. The future ahead was something I truly looked forward to. The end.